Okay, we're live. Welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. Good evening. This is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today we speak with Phuc Ly, managing partner of the Alpha B Group, an accounting group based in the Silicon Valley. So a little bit about Phuc. Phuc took over Alpha B Group when it was strictly a mom and pop operation nearly almost 10 years ago, and doubled its client base, which primarily consists of small businesses. And today, we're going to talk to them about what are some of the best accounting practices for startups, since we're in the middle of the tax season as we speak. And pretty grateful to have him on board because I know he's hella busy right now. So anyway, good evening, Phuc. Thanks for joining us here on Nerd Stalker Live from Silicon Valley, Santa Clara.
Yes, thank you, Greg. I'm glad you invited me to do this. I'm really excited.
Good, good. So, we don't talk a lot about accounting on this channel, so I think now is the time to talk about this. We're in the middle of tax season, almost closing it up, and probably in the middle of it if you want to kind of count April 15th as the end date. I know a lot of people do extensions, but, to most people, like my startup clients, they basically cringe when it comes to accounting and when we talk about that type of stuff. So anyway, what are some of the common mistakes that entrepreneurs and small businesses make, that you've seen over the years?
I think one of the first mistakes they make is that they don't think about accounting whatsoever, and that's normal. No one wants to think about taxes or accounting when they want to start their own business. If they're good at, say, fixing cars, or they're good at engineering, or they're good at cooking, that's what they want to do. And accounting and taxes is one of the last things on their minds. But the fact is that you do have to do this, and every year you do have to report your taxes. And it's good to know where your finances stand, in every month, really, just to see how business is looking, what parts are growing, what parts are not doing well. If you're spending way too much money in one area, how can you fix that? So I think that's where a lot of the problems come in, is just not really focused on the taxes itself, but it's good to be focused on the side that you're good at, which is the business side. But the lack of not doing the accounting part is pretty bad, just because it leads to more frustration later when you need to file your taxes. And if you're not doing that, then it leads to penalties, and you're just spending more money out of your own pocket. So it's just good to get a good hold of your accounting part.
With my startup clients, right? One thing they're good about is knowing what their revenue is, because they have to tell their investors.
Yeah.
But other than that, they're not really. I don't see them very, very good on actually the kind of the operational costs of the business. So are those some of the mistakes that you see that people have trouble with keeping track of?
That's true. I do see that a lot. Especially not a lot of people know exactly what to expense and what's a deduction, what's not a deduction. Such as if you're having a meal with a possible client, not a lot of people think about deducting that, when it really is possible to deduct if you're having dinner with the client or lunch with the client, or even with colleagues that's in the same field. I would actually encourage people to look into like little things like that add up, such as cell phone bills. So there's a lot that could add up. Even home office expense that not a lot of people think about as a deduction. And naturally, people want to think about revenue, but trying to reduce the taxable amount of that revenue is also very important.
Absolutely, because it just comes. I mean, it adds to your bottom line of the profit, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that's what you're always trying to do. It's I didn't take a lot of accounting classes, but in my own simple mind, it's revenue minus your cost is your profit. So let's talk about what some of these entrepreneurs and startups can do to maybe have 2016 a little bit better. What they could start immediately, like there's software, of course, right? I mean, is there things you can talk about in the software area that maybe could help them?
There's a lot of software out there right now. I mean, you have QuickBooks, which is probably the industry leader in when it comes to bookkeeping and keeping track of your expenses and revenue. But there's a lot of these other startups that are coming out, like they call it Zero. It's a cloud computing accounting software.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw recently on Facebook this company called Bench, where you have your they call it a personal bookkeeper service, but it's online. So you could always sync up your bank accounts and other accounts to the Bench platform, And then if you ever need to talk to someone physically, then you actually can have a phone call with them and talk to them, from what I understand. But there's so many things. I mean, the basic thing is just Excel. But if you're in a startup and you're looking for funding or investing, it's probably not the best choice to use. You want to really have someone that knows what to put in as an expense, what not to deduct, and things like that. So it's really important that the software you use is a good software that's reliable, that people can get a profit and loss right away or a balance sheet out of it right away, because that's what investors want to look at. So it's really hard to say which is the best accounting software, because QuickBooks offers so much. There's like so much in QuickBooks that it's a little overwhelming. But I think with a lot of these new startups that are doing bookkeeping, it's actually making things a lot easier, because even banks are making it easier for people to do their accounting work, such as syncing up all their transactions into the profit and loss.
Now, you know, a couple of my clients have talked to me about QuickBooks, and they weren't completely happy with it. And I don't know, is there a level? It just seems to me, and maybe you can answer this question. I know you can answer this question a lot better than me, but is there a level where QuickBooks just doesn't work for a small business in terms of its complexity and stuff like that?
I think QuickBooks is pretty good for most businesses if you know how to use the program. If you're just starting off, then QuickBooks might be a little bit overwhelming. So maybe a company like Xero or Bench that they're supposed to make things a lot easier. There's also an app on the iPhone, I think Android would have it too, called Shoebox, and that's really simple. All you do is take a picture of your receipt, and then you categorize it right then and there with the amounts, and it keeps track of it throughout the whole year. So by the end of the year, when it comes to tax time, you already have everything categorized. You have all the pictures of the receipts, and that's your proof to keep as a PDF. And I had a client that used it a couple years ago, and they showed it to me. I was actually really impressed by it, on how easy it was for them to use.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't use Shoebox, but I use an envelope to kind of store all my receipts, and then I have a folder that I PDF online stuff on. But
Yeah,
it's something that centralizes it is always a lot better than having
exactly.
it scattered in different places. I mean, because that adds, if I go to you, that just adds to your burden trying to sort it all out, right?
Exactly. It gets really messy, especially if you're dealing with a lot of paperwork and receipts. And then there's all different types of receipts. There's the receipts that's the long receipts that after a year it actually fades away. And if it fades and IRS actually questions it, then they're not going to accept the faded receipt. And then you also have the mixture of receipts that's being sent to you through email. And then say if you go to a place that uses Square, you can actually text the receipt to you. So there's all these different things that makes it hard to really keep track of these expenses. And if you could find one central thing to help just keep track of everything, it would be a lot easier.
Yeah, and a lot of my clients use Expensify, to keep track of their expenses as well. That's another one like Shoebox to track that. So, oh, that's cool. So anyway, yeah, no, thanks. That's good. I think that's a good start on how to get these startups up to par on the back office or accounting practices. But let's shift to the accounting industry. I think that that's an area where you think a lot about. You and I talk about that offline. So what are some of the mistakes that people make in your industry, as a whole?
Yeah, I think the industry, accountants in general, their personality. I think their personalities are one of the things that hinder making their office grow, because they're more like, okay, it's black and white, it's all about the numbers, and that's really it. I personally don't act that way. I'm more like, okay, let's go over the numbers slowly. I want to explain everything to you and make it clear, make it so that you understand. But I know a lot of accountants in there that just say it is what it is, and I don't like doing it that way. I like to say, okay, this is what we're looking at, and here's the reasons why, and this is how we can fix it for next year.
Oh, that's cool. That's a nice approach, actually, because I think that it makes it a little bit more personal, your approach. So I like that. And what are some of the challenges that you're seeing with, is it this thing we just talked about of just the basic accounting practices of these small businesses. But what are some of the challenges in the accounting industry that you're
I
seeing?
think it's just keeping up with all the different tax laws that's always changing. I mean, a
Mm,
good example just happened this past December. So at the end of 2013, there's this one big deduction that a lot of business could use to get a big deduction for, but it didn't extend out to 2014. So during from January to pretty much December of 2014, I was telling clients, oh, yeah, unfortunately, you can't take this big deduction like you did before because Congress never passed a law to extend it out. All of a sudden, middle of December of 2014, Congress says, oh, let's retroactively allow them to make the deduction. So it only gives us 2 weeks to really make any adjustments or to buy their equipment if they needed to buy their equipment within that 2 weeks. So it's things like that that gets a little frustrating dealing with the passage of Congress and dealing with Congress in general and with IRS cuts and everything. It makes it really hard to contact if there's a situation with the client and the IRS. To contact an IRS agent could be pretty difficult.
wow. Yeah, I could imagine that. With the number of things going out there, even though there's things that are red flags for quote unquote the IRS audits, I think that at the same time, it's hard to probably try to figure out how to support these guys as you kind of, support your clients as they go through some of this type of stuff, right?
Exactly. And it's frustrating because I'm kind of like the middleman between the client and the IRS. So I'm trying to reach the IRS on behalf of the client, but because I can't do that, the client gets frustrated because they're scared that something's going to happen to them. The IRS is going to levy their stuff or going to go after them. So, when anyone gets an IRS letter, it could be a scary thing and they just want to get fixed right away. But how is it possible to get fixed when no one at the IRS is helping me respond to them?
One thing that we were just talking about is some of the challenges in the industry. But what do you see the industry actually doing well, or what does the success of this industry kind of look like in today's world?
I actually think a lot of these small tax offices like mine is actually growing. There's a lot of tax offices out there, and it's I think that's what they're doing well is that they're focusing on individuals and small businesses and really helping those type of clientels out. And it's just a good industry to get into right now. Just helping people. A lot of people want to start their own businesses now. They worked at Google for 6+ years, and they're ready to go do their own startup. They're ready to start their own business. I'll have clients that worked at, say, a restaurant as a manager all their life, and all of a sudden now they just want to open up a bar, and stuff like that. That's really exciting.
No, that's neat. No, that's neat. So, no, I think let's do this more often because I think a lot of my clients are starting to think more about the back office or accounting area. I mean, back office in general is kind of HR, accounting,
Yeah.
some of the structural stuff that deals with the government,
Mhm.
and they just don't understand it. Like you said, they're great at what they do. They're engineers, and they just
Mhm.
they want to continue to do that, and they don't want to be kind of sidelined by some of this other stuff they're not very good at, which is
Exactly.
accounting sometimes. So anyway, yeah, let's close off the interview, and I appreciate your time. I'll get you back to tax season. We'll talk about probably my taxes after this,
Okay.
but let's close out the interview. How do people get a hold of you and the Alpha B Group?
Probably the easiest way is through email at info@alphabgroup.com. We have a Facebook page. I have my own personal LinkedIn page, and that's a good way to get a hold of me, email me, or even read. I always write these publications on LinkedIn, so I even read whatever I want to write or whatever's on my mind. I just write it on there.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool stuff. We'll have to maybe do some interviews on that one in the
Okay.
next few months and stuff like that. Yeah, no, that's great. So anyway, yeah, I appreciate you getting your time. But anyway,
Yeah.
that was Phuc Ly of Alpha B Group, helping small businesses and startups get out of the hot water with Uncle Sam, basically. So this is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there. Thanks again, Phuc, and thanks. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Greg.
All right.